Good, morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Taylor. Thank you so much for having me, commissioners. I am a partnership specialist with the US Census Bureau, and I work specifically with Hamilton and Clermont County. And so my goal today is to give you all an overview of the 2020 census, which is just around the corner, and share some ways in which you can support the work that we're trying to do. So first, let's start with some quick background on the U.S. Census. So the U.S. Constitution actually requires a census of the population every 10 years, and so that's a count of every person in the United States. So it's a major operation. It was actually first conducted in 1790. At the time, the count was 3.9 million people, and federal marshals on horseback actually went around and were responsible for counting every person. So since then, obviously, the census methods have evolved. Have continued to change over time. So it went from just being able to respond via mail to having a telephone response option to now in 2020 being the first time where folks will be able to respond online. And most importantly, census results are important and are used in various ways. So I'm sure many of you, probably already know that census results are used to determine how many congressional seats each state gets in the House of Representatives. The data are used by states to draw legislative districts, school districts, and determine voting precincts. Census data are used to allocate federal funds to states and local governments. And overall, census data are regularly used by governments and businesses to inform planning and decision making. So this slide here just shows how the 2010 census results impacted congressional seats. So you can see that Ohio lost 2 seats in 2010, and there's a potential for the state to lose another seat after the 2020 census. So this is why ensuring we have a complete and accurate count is important, because our representation matters. And so for even more uses of census data, many people may not realize how census data can impact their everyday lives. Census results are used to determine how over $675 billion in federal funds are distributed annually. So these are funds for things like transportation and parks, social service programs like SNAP, WIC, and housing. It's used to determine funding amounts for pre-K, Head Start, school lunch programs, and the funds are also used for healthcare services like EMTs and community clinics. And really this list, it's a massive list, it goes on. So there's definitely at least one way these results could impact your life. And so what does this mean for the state of Ohio specifically? George Washington University conducted a study to estimate how much federal funding each state could lose for every person that's not counted. This was based on data from 16 of the largest federal assistance programs that use census-derived statistics. And so for Ohio, that number is $1,814 per person per year. So think about it. If 100 people in your community are not counted, that's $181,400 of federal funds the community could miss out on. But remember that census numbers are used for 10 years. So over a 10-year span, that's $1,814,000. So it's really important for us to get this right, bottom line. And so there are certain groups that for various reasons have been hard to count historically. These groups, some of them are listed here, and I'm sure we could all list a number of reasons or factors that contribute to these groups being undercounted. For example, it could be language barriers, lack of knowledge about what the census is, or even fear. And so it's important to note that the information collected by the Census Bureau is only used to produce statistics. It's actually illegal for the Census Bureau to disclose or publish any personally identifiable information. And every Census Bureau employee, including myself, takes a lifetime oath not to release any of that information. And if we were to do so, it's actually a federal crime. So we work with local partners and trusted community voices to reach these groups. And overall, we just want partners to spread the message that the census is easy, safe, and important. And so sorry that map is a little hard to see, but one tool available to partners on the Census website is something we call ROAM, which stands for Response Outreach Area Mapper. This map pulls together data from different census surveys and gives each census tract a low response score. So it shows what percentage of the population is unlikely to respond. And so this is a tool that community partners can use when planning outreach or promotion efforts leading up to 2020. So this is a screenshot of Clermont County, and the darker the color, the higher the low response score. And so zooming in, if you click on a certain census tract, Rome will show you characteristics or demographics of that population. This may give you further information in addition to whatever local knowledge you have of what groups or communities should be a focus of outreach. And this is not to say that you should only focus on the darker areas, but maybe, pour more resources into those areas. And these demographics are not necessarily meant to be perfect predictors, but could give some insight. So here I just highlighted that, once again, kind of small, but almost 52% of the population are renters in this area, and 21% of the households have children under 6. So renters, for example, may not respond for a variety of reasons. Maybe there are more people living there than that are listed on the lease. And then we know that young children are historically undercounted in the census. So it's interesting to just go into Rome and click around and see what you find. So focusing in now on 2020. So Census Day is April 1st, 2020. The goal of the 2020 census is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. And we are really working to ensure that we get a complete and accurate count. So there are a few new features of the 2020 census that I want to highlight. For 2020, we'll be launching a robust outreach campaign using traditional media and new media outlets to ensure that everyone sees census messaging. And as I mentioned, 2020 will be the first year where people will have the option to respond online, and we are really encouraging people to do that. And overall for 2020, we're utilizing automated systems for all aspects of census operations to increase efficiency and save taxpayer dollars. And so this slide gives an overview of some of the various elements involved in the 2020 census design. First, we established where to count. So this means ensuring we have an up-to-date address list. Then we want to increase the response to the 2020 census by motivating people to respond. And we do this essentially through the nationwide communications and partnership campaign. We work with trusted voices to maximize outreach and increase awareness. And as your partnership specialist, my goal is to really help you get the word out to your community. So the next column is counting the population. We make it easy for people to respond, as I already mentioned, online, on the phone, through mail, or if you don't respond through any of those options, someone will show up at your door. The survey is short and it only takes about 10 minutes. And then finally, the census results are released. And this is a timeline of all those different operations. So looking at the timeline and where we are now, over the past few months, the partnership specialists have started reaching out to local governments and key partners. In August, we'll begin the address canvassing operation, which is essentially where census employees will be out checking the address list, particularly addresses that we weren't able to confirm by any other data source. So you may see people out and about during this time conducting those checks. We are planning to open area census offices, which I'll show a map of. In March of 2020, the invitation to respond to the census will go out across the nation. And on March 23rd, the online response will open, the online survey will open. Non-response follow-up, so that's when census takers go door to door, will begin in May of 2020. Oops. There we go. So here is the plan for the Ohio area 2020 census offices. So there are 6 regional census offices. Ohio is a part of the Philadelphia region, and there will be 8 census offices opening up across the state covering different portions, as you can see there. So Columbus is the only office that's currently open, and the rest will be opening this fall. So by this point, I hope you're wondering how you can help us out, how you can support the 2020 census. And I think I've mentioned partnership a number of times, but I just want to emphasize again to collaborate with us. Collaborate with us on engagement, on promotion, and on these operations. So for engagement, invite census representatives to meetings and events like this one here, any opportunity to continue to spread awareness, and connect us to others in your network who you think would make a great partner or may be interested in working with the Census Bureau. For promotion, really just encourage your community to participate in the census. And this can take many forms, like posting on websites, social media, or including census messaging in local events like festivals or fairs. A great way to encourage participation is through something we call complete count committees, which I'll touch on in a moment. And lastly, operation. The Census Bureau is hiring thousands of workers across the country specifically for the 2020 census. As jobs become available in your community, you can promote these jobs. Our goal is to hire locally. And since many of these positions are remote, meaning folks work from their home, we'll be looking for space to conduct testing and training. Consider if you have a space like a community center or a library that you would be willing to let us use. And so these are just a few ways to collaborate, and we're definitely open to hear any ideas you may have as well. And so complete count committees are volunteer committees established by local governments or community leaders. This was an initiative that started with the 2010 census, and they found that CCCs, as they're called, were key to increasing response rate by spreading awareness and motivating communities to respond. So we're encouraging governments and communities to establish a CCC to increase the response rate. And so these briefly, just 4 steps for establishing a complete count committee. So first you would identify a chair, the members, and maybe subcommittees depending on the size. Each CCC would determine which groups should be represented on the committee based on their local knowledge. The second step is to host a training for the committee members. So the training is conducted by a census rep, probably me. It provides an overview of the 2020 census, really does a deep dive, and just make sure that the members are knowledgeable about the census and are confident to go out and continue to spread that message. The third step would be for the committee to host a planning meeting, a series of planning meetings to develop a work plan. And so this work plan is really just establishing the goals, identifying those hard to count populations, and developing a plan to promote the census that is tailored to the unique characteristics of their community. And then the final step is just really implementing that plan. So the CCC would implement the outreach activities that they've identified leading up to 2020 with the goal of increasing awareness. A partnership specialist would serve as a liaison between the CCC and the Census Bureau, providing guidance and answering any questions that may come up. But the local government or community group has complete ownership of the CCC. So whatever they want to do is totally up to them. And so this image here, this is an example of a government-led CCC, but really it's just an example, not anything set in stone. It could be broad or more narrow in focus, completely up to you. Perhaps there's an existing task force or coalition that could serve as a CCC, and they could add 2020 to their agenda or their current projects. We just encourage groups to consider having diverse representation to make sure a variety of perspectives are at the table. And it does not have to be a lot of work. CCCs are really just kind of an official vehicle, an official way of mobilizing community resources to make sure community members are informed and in turn more likely to respond to the census. And so we're just encouraging people to get started now. I keep saying 2020 is around the corner. It may seem like it's far, it's not. So we want folks to prepare now by identifying resources that they want to use to promote the census, coordinate with other groups and organizations in your area. CCCs are forming now across the state and the nation, and trainings are being scheduled. And remember that partnership specialists like myself are here to help. It's really up to all of us to educate and motivate our constituents, our colleagues, our friends, our neighbors to respond to the census. So we encourage you to become a 2020 census partner and help us achieve a complete and accurate count. And so really briefly, I just want to go over some available resources that we have on our website. There are a number of fact sheets, toolkits, infographics, social media graphics, all things that I can provide to you if you're interested. These things can be shared through community organizations, in newsletters, on social media, really anywhere that would get the word out. And I also want to mention that we have recruiting assistants that can attend job fairs or even host job application workshops where they can help folks apply for those census jobs that I mentioned. And then if you're just really into data and want to know more about census data from any of the surveys that the Census Bureau administers and how it could be useful to any of your work or planning, there are different data trainings available online, as well as being able to connect with a data expert. So, become a 2020 Census partner. Here's some contact information. I also have my cards available if anyone wants to chat. I have our social media sites listed here so you can connect with us, and you can always learn more at census.gov/2020census. Thank you.